doesn't matter, right? But Thursday afternoon, you know, we've got some great stuff going. We've got some wonderful blends over here. So thank you for coming for this next masterclass. For those of you out there who are keen to get on but you haven't registered, we still have some places left, so drop your name at the counter and quickly come on and join in this very interesting session. Now, you've heard of the Karate Kid. Today we have the Comeback Kid, and that's basically because whiskies, you know, are making a comeback, especially blends. And today we have with us Ben and Danny from Drinks Alliance, who are here to give you the lowdown, all right, on you know what's new and happening in the world of whiskey. So once again, thank you for coming. This is a collaboration between Crafted and MIFB. And if you haven't already left your contact details with us, drop it at the registration counter, and we'll keep you in the know of all the wonderful experiences and activities that we will be organizing throughout the year. So let's not stand between you and a fantastic afternoon. I'm going to hand the mic over to Danny. Danny, mic's yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So, back to the familiar places and for the new people. So, today's topic will be different from yesterday's. Today we are going to talk about blended whiskies. So, I'm just here to challenge our perception of blended whiskies. We tend to assume that blended is always lower in quality, but it's not always the case. So, yeah, that's what I want. So, a brief introduction of what is whiskey in general. We'll talk about later. We'll be talking about like how Scotch whiskey is made. Why are we talking about Scotch whiskey and the birth of blends, and like why blend became popular. So, quick introduction of how whiskey is made. There's a sort of a very basic process. One, you start from growing barley. Then you turn it to malted barley by giving a germination process, followed by a mashing where you mix it with water and yeast, and then go through a fermentation process, distillation and aging in a barrel for 3 years minimum, transferring the bottle. That is dead simple how whiskey is made. Right? So if anyone has a question, you can always just ask me more about it. And moving forward, we'll talk about what is like blended or single malt or single grain and the definitions. So very simply, so whiskey is very simple. There are 3 words. Single malt whiskey. It means different. It's an individual term. So a single means it comes from a single distillery. A malt means it's a malt whiskey or grain whiskey, and whiskey, right? So a single malt whiskey is whiskeys that are produced from one single distillery only, and then bottled in. A single grain whiskey would be green whiskeys produced from a single distillery and bottled, and a blended malt means a malted whiskey from multiple distillery. And same with blended grain, and Scotch whiskey is just a combination of malt and grain and whiskey from any other distillery. So, and sort of why are we talking about Scotch whiskies today, and why I find Scotch whiskey really fascinating is that it is one of the more consumed whiskey in the world, and it's also very highly regulated with age statements, minimum 3 years, the choice of casks you can use, and and what is the distillation process, and all this is fairly heavy regulated. So moving forward, like why blend? Back to the topic of blend today. So why blends became popular is very simply that blend fixes a lot of issues that early distillery has. Because when back then when whiskies are not as popular, their distillation were a little bit rough. They may not reach that client demand. So blend fix the issue. They can just mix a different whiskey in it, create a new different profile, rather than having to go through the whole process of remaking whiskey. So yeah, it just makes whiskey a lot smoother, a lot easier, and a lot more accessible, because now you can make a larger volume by combining multiple
Hello everyone. So I think Danny has gone through very quickly about sort of a very brief aspect about Scotch whisky. So we are going to look into Scotch whisky in general in terms when we talk about blends today. But of course, blended whisky does come from even Ireland as well. But the rise of single malt post blended whisky, we consume a lot of blended whisky. For those who've attended yesterday's session, and quite a few of you came back today. So you know a little bit about our British colonial past and how it influenced the way we drink whiskey, especially with blended Scotch. Yep. So it started from there, and blended Scotch whisky was a staple in Malaysia. Right. So we drank that for quite a number of years, and of course everyone knows that Johnny Walker, Chivas, or Valentine's. And then eventually, consumers, or people like all of you, you wanted more, you wanted to explore a bit more. So that's when we started going into single malt. Now, what makes it very different between a single malt and blended whisky is that single malt itself constitutes probably nothing more than 10% of the whisky that's actually being sold out into the market. Majority of the whisky that's sold out to the market from Scotland are actually blended whisky. Right? So blend still trumps a huge part of the whisky industry itself. Now, why single malt has taken the rise? I would say in the last, for Malaysia at least, for the last 20 to 25 years, is that it's a gradual rise. It's not extremely exponential, but in the last 10 years, it has been relatively exponential. The reason being is consumers being a little bit more discerning, and people are exploring the whiskey industry very widely, especially with new labels coming into the market, and also with a variety of experimental releases. So the consumers in Malaysia, generally drinkers in Malaysia, have started exploring this a little bit more, and eventually, down the line, I think COVID was a great time for us, especially someone from the industry. Well, it wasn't a great time as in like everyone had to stay at home, but it was a great time for us because we sold a lot of very unusual whiskies that people did not drink before COVID. Right? So during COVID, we sold a lot of high-age whiskies. We sold whiskies. I guess everyone just had a lot of time in hand and didn't know what to do at home, so they were ordering a lot of weird labels or fancy labels that they don't normally drink. And they buy it back home. You know, you were doing a lot of Zoom calls, well, not really for work, but for drinking. So a lot of people did all these experimental sessions. So that brought the whole market sort of to a point where they started looking into a variety of labels. And that gave also single malt a big push. Now, come today, why we think that blended Scotch or blended whiskies is going to come back is that we start seeing younger generation of consumers here. When I say younger generation, if you are probably between 20 to your early 30s, okay? So anyone's like below 30 here? Anyone? Yeah, okay. Alright, I'm not sure if this applies to you, but the blended whiskey that we say today is sort of seeing a revival is that because blended whiskey in the market today appeals a bit better to the younger generation drinkers who actually want more versatility in their whiskies that they drink. So versatility meaning, number one, the flavor of the whiskey itself is not skewed towards one direction. You can mix them. You can drink them in a highball, you can have them in a cocktail, you can have them on the rocks. So blended whiskey is very versatile in that sense. Now, if you look at single malt, the flavors that it sort of gives, they're very individualistic in character. Yeah? So I was telling the session yesterday, now what's the difference really when you drink a single malt and a blended whiskey? Now, people ask me this all the time. I just got a very simple explanation for you. Blended whiskey, if you drink it, is all about that consistency and balance. So it's like drinking a coffee. You like a certain balance every day, you have 2 sugars in your coffee or 1 sugar in coffee, you do it the same every day. Blended Scotch or blended whiskies, it's all about that. Now, single malt is all about individual characteristics. So it's a little bit more about the distillery's profile, the region where it's produced. So it's a bit like drinking wine, more about provenance, a little bit more about the terroir of the area and whatnot. So these two can be viewed in this particular way. If one day someone may ask you this, I find this very effective in getting people to understand why they will drink blended and single malt. Now, throughout time, if you see single malt that's been consumed a lot in the last 20 years, behind the scenes, a lot of blended whiskey is still being consumed. It's just that single malt has always been on the marketing forefront of it, right? So blended Scotch has always been there. It's just that it's now coming out of the shadows again. Blended whiskies are coming out of the shadows again, and it is now being enjoyed more and more. And it's not just driven by the Scotch whisky industry, yeah? It's also widely driven by the Irish whisky industry. Right. So the Irish whisky industry drives a lot of people to drinking blends. For example, Jameson is one of the most common blends that you get out there. Right. So that's how basically blended the demand for blended whiskey flavors are sort of growing. So now, of course, with different types of opportunities of enjoying whiskies in the market today, especially lots of cocktail bars. So you see a lot of that changing. And a lot of younger consumers, or even consumers who are slightly older or traditional drinkers, are starting to explore, starting to enjoy cocktails a bit more. Yep. You wouldn't get that 20 years ago. Yeah. Everyone goes to a bar, you head out, you get the best deal on the bottle, or you have your beers. Right. So we don't really explore cocktails much. But today, so many different bars, so many different variety of drinks out there. Now, the other aspect about basically blended Scotch is that, or blended whiskies, are that they actually offer, obviously today, they're very competitive in pricing. So and because of technology, we are able to make blends that are more consistent. So you get better pricing, more consistent flavor, and that's what a lot of drinkers or consumers are sort of gravitating to as well. Right? So I know you see the whiskey on the table and you probably want to drink it already. Just a moment, okay? So there are basically some aspects in terms of flavor, or even in terms of the way each bottles are made or presented. But what we are going to do today is not to try to think about the label that's being poured on the table for you. We're going to look at basically blended whiskies. There's two single malts there. We'll see the perspective of it. Now the blend is actually made with both single malts. Okay, and a few other different malts, but the both single malts that you'll be tasting are part of the blends, right? So left to right, the leftmost glass is the blend. We'll start with the blend, and then eventually we'll move towards single malt. Okay, left to right. Yep. Okay, if you're starting from right to left, we'll have to stop you from drinking. Okay, right now, just to give you a very quick context. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about blending, but at the same time while we are actually enjoying the whiskey. So leftmost glass, everyone. Now, very quickly, anyone here who has never had whiskey before? Oh, big liar, he was here. I'm not even sure why he's here again today. Anyone knows his boss? Well, if you're his boss, okay. Good job. If you're looking for work, she's the person to look for. Okay, right. So basically, to enjoy whiskey, very quickly, get a quick nose of it. Now, I don't look at the color of whiskey because the color of whiskey don't tell you much about the whiskey, except probably what cask has been aged. But that's technicalities. We'll leave it for another day. But very quickly, get a dive in. With your nose, what you want to do is put the glass close to your nose and just breathe through your mouth, just like snorkeling. Now, the first one is actually a blended malt. So it's made from a blend of different single malts, right? They're all Scottish. Now, this one basically is made from a blend of bourbon cask and sherry cask single malt. Now, in a blend, what do I look for? I would look for basically layers of flavor, a bit more on balance. So I don't want something too overpowering. Okay. In terms of nose, at times blend you will get basically more layers of, if in this case, if it's coming from bourbon and sherry cask that's being used predominantly, you're going to get fruit flavors, a little bit more of the vanilla notes in there as well. Now if you're ready, have a few sips of the whiskey. I'll normally do 3 sips, okay? We are in Malaysia, but no yamsing at this point, right? So basically just 3 sips. Why? Because between the first and the third sip, they all taste very different. So you can't make a decision about whiskey in just 1 sip. Now, while you're at that, one of the key things that we see that has made blended whiskey sort of grow significantly in the last few years, leading up to the point now where it's starting to be popular with the younger generation again, is that blended whiskies, for example, Malaysia, Johnny Walker XL21 is one of the largest brands with the largest growth factor in globally. Malaysia is one of the key markets, for example, right? So it shows that there is still a very strong demand, but it's because of premiumization and the way we've positioned blended Scotch that in the last few years that's actually helped to do that. So I can give you these details very accurately because I was involved with the XR21 project. So I can tell you that it is one of the most successful stories in terms of how blended Scotch made a comeback, because single malts were very dominant at one point, but this sort of helped the blended Scotch sort of made a comeback between, I would say, between 2018 to 2017 to 2019. Yeah, it made a very big impact at that point of time. So that helped, yeah. And a lot of nice, interesting packaging has also brought blended Scotch to light as well. So you can see fancy packaging to very innovative packaging. Now, has everyone had 3 sips of this? Yeah. Now, how do you find this whiskey? Anyone? You can just shout it out in your room. We're all drinking, so it's okay. Anyone? Say something. So how? Anyone? How do you find the flavors of this whiskey? Could be anything. Doesn't matter. Taste is very subjective. She finds it smoky. Okay. Sorry. Smooth and creamy. Yep. Okay. Now, I don't think this whiskey is smoky, but sometimes if you find it smoky, it's because it's not exactly smoky, but we sort of refer this to sort of amber. So it's like you know, if you burn a piece of wood, it turns white. It has that clean smoke, that amber. I'm not sure if you've nosed an amber before. Obviously, most of the time when you cook a piece of meat over a barbecue, you have a piece of amber there. You're only focused on the meat, right? But if you actually sort of don't burn your nose, but if you move a little bit closer to nose the amber, there's actually a very faint hint of very clean white smoke that comes out of an amber. So I think you're getting that, and that usually comes from the toasting of the wood barrels or wood casks that you use to age the whiskey. But the creamy notes, smooth notes, you get a lot of creamy notes from the bourbon cask. Now, smooth notes, I was talking about the word smooth yesterday as well. I think a lot of times when we refer to a whiskey being smooth is basically how easy it goes down. Yeah. And for blend, a lot of people actually do look for how easy it goes down, how smooth it is. Because smoothness, or basically that whole velvety sensation, you can get a lot of it usually from blending. Right, single malt, when we get the single malt from the distillery, we can adjust it with addition of water and all that, but we can't change how the profile is. If the whiskey tends to be a bit more on the spicier side, it will carry a certain characteristics of that spiciness into the bottle itself, right? So, but when you can blend, like what Danny has said earlier, you can tweak and you can change, right? You can change the profile almost instantaneously with a few different whiskey being added to it. Okay, it will make wonders. You will be surprised sometimes how much just of maybe a few drops of very old whiskey can impact a very big batch of whiskey when you throw it into the blend. Yeah. So if you do blendings and all that, you will be able to see it. Now, the other thing about this is that the flavor, if you realize, is not complex or anything. It's just very easy to understand. Now, blends are made that way. Yeah. And you can imagine drinking this over ice, with water, with soda. It actually works very well. So the flavors are very widely accepted, and that's what makes blend quite easily accepted today among the new drinkers. People find it to be very friendly, very approachable in flavor. Alright, so this is the blend itself. Now, we are going to move towards the single malt. So what we are going to do next is to break this down. Yeah, we're going to taste single malt right now to see if you can find find these particular flavors in the blend that, from the blend that you've been tasting, the flavors in there, can you find those flavors in these 2 glasses of single malt itself? Okay, now these once again are the single malt that's being used to actually make the blend. Okay, so let's go to the glass in the middle. Now while we're at that, I'll just tell you a little bit more about the Malaysian whiskey market. Now quick nose on this. Now this one's a little bit oaky, you maybe get a little bit more of that sort of, for me I get a bit more of that strawberry candy notes coming out of it. Fresh oak, fresh cut, grass, you get a bit of those notes, a bit grassy. Yep. Now if you don't get what I'm nosing, you get something else, it's perfectly fine. Okay? Be it, it could be durians, lychees, whatever you get inside, it's fine. It's very personal, okay? But most importantly is if you can try to connect the dots between the single malts and the blend earlier. Now, if you're, once again, going to taste this, 3 sips, yeah? So the other thing about blends in single malt in Malaysia is we've always perceived single malt to be higher in value, right? Because that's how it's marketed. Now, for example, we had the blended malt earlier. It's made with a blend of different single malts. So you can't say it's inferior to malts, right? But why? Why are blends much cheaper compared to single malt? So I'll tell you this. Because almost 90% of the industry's production goes to blend. Economy of scale, number 1. Secondly, grain whiskey that's used in a lot of blended Scotch are actually much cheaper to produce because in terms of production, because of the apparatus or the steels that we use in there, okay, I'm not going to go in depth, that's very technical, but if you want to know a bit more, we can talk about it later. But it makes it very economical for the whole process. So that's why blend becomes much more cheaper to produce, but not necessarily inferior to the single malts. Yep. So that's a very big difference then. So understanding what you want in terms of flavor or what you're drinking the whiskey for, or be it an occasion, or for a person who runs a bar, if I'm going to use it for cocktails, or if I'm going to use it for highballs or whatnot, understanding it makes a very big difference. Yep. And both products are equally good, it's just why am I drinking it? Or why do I choose to drink it? Right, so that's really dependent. Yeah. So that's one of the key things that I think we have this perception in Malaysia between single malts and blend. So tomorrow, or today onwards, when you see a blend, do understand that there's single malts in as part of the blend itself. Yep. So if you think single malt is good, then there's definitely some goodness in the blend as well. So they are all very interrelated. We can't have the blended industry without single malt. Right? Now, before the 70s, nobody really talked about single malts in the market. All the single malts were pushed for blending purposes. Right? So blended Scotch was there way longer before single malts have came into the market. Right? So how do you find this one? Sorry? A lot smoother. Okay, alright. Anything apart from smooth? Okay, I'm not sure. Spicy? Less spicy? Okay. Now, you're actually not wrong with the less spicy part. Let me explain to you why. Sometimes, for single malt itself, but in this case, because it's a blended malt, so all of it are single malt in there. But sometimes in a blended Scotch, when you use single malt and single grain whiskey to be blended, you may find a little bit more spiciness in the blended Scotch. It's because of the grain whiskey. Grain whiskey tend to lend a bit more spiciness. Now, that's where also the gentleman with the smoothness on the single malt is true as well, because a lot of the single malt, because the flavor, I wouldn't say it's one directional, but it's because it's more individual in flavor. There's not too many flavors being put together. You can actually have more clarity on what you're tasting. Now, a lot more clearer in terms of what you get in there. The layers may not be as much, but it's very focused. If I'm going to get, like this one here, I'm going to get a bit of that sweet creaminess for this. I get that. I identify that sweet creaminess. It's very direct. And so single malt gives you that approach in terms of flavor. Okay. Right, so this one has been aged in a bourbon cask. So bourbon casks tend to land a little bit more of those vanilla notes, creamy notes, a bit more of those wood sweetness in there. So that's what is actually contributing to the creaminess in the first glass that you're tasting. Okay. Now, the other thing about bourbon casks as well is it does tend to land also a bit of that spiciness. Okay, and you may find that it has a bit of that bite sometimes, right? So this may deliver that particular bite that you probably may be tasting on your palate. All right. Okay. So we're going to move on to the last glass. Now this is also a single malt, and this is the Eden Mill single malt from the Lowlands in Scotland, and this has been aged in sherry cask. Now, if you take a quick nose, you're going to nose a lot of dried orange peels. It's a bit fruitcake, like chocolatey, yeah. And you may also find it slightly oily. Get a bit of that oiliness in there as well, like a fruitcake, yeah. So, because of the sherry cask, it lends that bigger, bolder, richer, rounder flavor to the whiskey. Now, if you have a very quick sip of this, now you will find that this whiskey to be very soft and gentle compared to normally other single malts that you have. It's because of its lowland profile. So remember, I say single malts, they normally make them to sort of represent a certain region or area. So in the lowlands in Scotland, you get very light, very balanced single malt coming up from the region. One of the other key examples is Auchentoshan, right? So that's from the lowlands as well. So Eden Mill is from the lowlands, and it actually lends a very soft, gentle profile to the whiskey. Now the third one that you're tasting has a lot of that sweetness, and that's contributing to the sweetness earlier again in the first one, which is the blend. A lot of fruity sweetness, like dried fruits, you get a bit more dates coming through. And the finish, I'm not sure how many of you have had rum or cognac before. It sort of gives you that cognac or that rum finish. It's almost like Christmas in a glass, a bit early, but it's almost like Christmas in a glass here. Yeah. So yes, a lot of that sort of winter Christmassy flavor. Okay. So I just wanted all of you to experience this, to understand why blends and single malt are different, and why they do stand out appeal to a new upcoming generation of drinkers. You can see that basically a lot of drinkers today want, like I said earlier, they want versatility, they want a flavor that's easily approachable. So that's why blend sort of is making a comeback. We think it's going to make a comeback, and we do see it making a comeback in the market. And the signs were there in the last couple of years, especially a couple of years before COVID. So we do see that coming back, and it will be an interesting thing to see how blends are being revived in the market today. And hopefully it will open up a new sort of doors to a different whiskey era in Malaysia, where we've been very driven by single malt for almost more than 2 decades. Right? So I hope you guys have enjoyed the short presentation we have for you. Do you all have any questions? If you're asking for more whiskey, no. You can have a bit more.
What do you usually pair the whiskey with? Like
Okay, well, how do you, what do I pair my whiskey with? Okay, I'm Chinese, of course. I go to a Chinese restaurant with a bunch of friends. We have whiskey, we talk very loud, we laugh, and then we sing karaoke. Right, that's the best pairing. But no, I'm just kidding. It goes well with a lot of things. Okay, let me answer this question very easily for you. Now, just remember what you had earlier, the bourbon cask and the sherry cask. So bourbon cask will represent whiskies that are lighter in flavor. The sherry cask will represent whiskey that are heavier, sweeter in flavor. So anything light, like a bourbon cask, always works fairly well with more, for example, more European food where the flavors are more subtle, softer. Anything that's clean, real, for example, fish, chicken, and all that, it works better with a bourbon cask. Now, if you have something on a sherry cask, it works better with something heavier. For example, if you have a piece of steak, right? If you have basically like a heavily charred piece of meat, okay, or you have something like a dark chocolate, it works well with that. Yeah. So dark, although flavor pairing can work very diversely, but in the interest of making it simple, heavy with heavy, light with light, it's easier to pair that way. But you know what? I've had some very interesting pairing before. For example, I like steamed fish, but you must go with a smoky whiskey. It works very well with a peaty smoky whiskey. You have a chance to try that, right? It's not a common combination, but it's because you sort of experiment with it and you find that this works very well, right? So if on the basis of working with flavor pairing, light with light, heavy with heavy flavors, right? But at the end of the day, if you're having food and whiskey, just play around with it. That's the whole idea, the fun behind it. Tasting. Right? Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir. I'll help you.
I'm concerned about fake whiskey. Do you think fake whiskey or counterfeit whiskey is possible, and does it exist actually in Malaysia? Because honestly, I've never tasted one before. I don't know. So do you think this exists in Malaysia?
Okay, this is the second question about fake whiskey. I got one yesterday. So yes, it is a prevalent problem in many parts of the world. Malaysia, unfortunately, is one part. Anywhere where the taxes are high, there will be opportunities for people to make counterfeit spirits. And whiskey being the largest category of spirit that we consume in Malaysia, or even cognac, that's fake for sure. Yeah, and I've seen that before. We've gone through like basically that we learn how to identify fake bottles. But of course, this is not something I can share, but we do have ways of identify them. But today the level is really high. Yeah. The way they make fakes today are really very level. So if to answer your question, yes, there are fakes in the market. So if it's how to avoid them, very simple. If the price is too good to be true, don't buy it. That's it. Unless it's on like a warehouse sale or something, right? If it's too good to be true, just don't buy it. Or if buy it from a source that you know is a verifiable source. Yeah. It could be duty free as well, but the fact is that even today, a lot of okay, just to give you a context why even today this is becoming even more prevalent. Shipping cost is very expensive between the western part of the world into Asia, right? And that's even impacted how, in terms of cost-wise, how expensive it is to actually even sell you a bottle of whiskey in duty-free. So that's why even duty-free has fakes. If it's too cheap to be true, it's definitely not true. Yep. Okay, any other question?
Is there a lifespan to whiskey?
There's no exact lifespan to whiskey. So the question is, how long can I keep my whiskey, I guess, right? So there's no lifespan to whiskey, but you just need to make sure that the whiskey is kept in a cool place. It doesn't evaporate, and just need to make sure that the bottle is tilted on and off, so the cork doesn't dry up and shrink. Because once it dries up and shrink, it will allow air space, and that's where evaporation happens. But otherwise, you can keep it indefinitely. 2-3 generations down the road, no problem. Do you have some very interesting whiskey you're keeping? If you have, you put them in a proper place in storage. Just you don't have to be air conditioned. You need just a cool place, and you can buy paraffin. You just tape up the whiskey, right? So paraffin tape is the ones we use to seal that bottles. You can just order it online. You can seal the top of the whiskey bottle itself. That will help to prevent the possibility of evaporation. Okay?
Is there a way to identify
Okay, is there a way to identify counterfeit bottles or by looking at it? Yes, there is a way to identify by looking at it. Like many other things, there's a way to identify by visually. Assessing it, of course, tasting it. But you taste it is like, if you have to taste a counterfeit bottle, you know the guy is really good at the label. But most of the time, if it's counterfeit, it could be also original bottle that's been refilled, right? So there are signs that we look for, but of course we don't share this to the public because then counterfeiters will know how we actually identify these problems. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, if you have not any more questions, I would like to say thank you so much for listening to me for the last 30 minutes, and I hope you have a good day at the exhibition today. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay guys, give it one more time for Danny and Danny. Thank you very much. I'm a little bit surprised because I would have figured that you guys would have got overtime with the whiskeys. Maybe you need to bring more whiskeys next time. Okay guys, so thank you so much for attending the session. The next session is actually at around 3 o'clock, right? 3 o'clock. So if you haven't registered yet, if there's space, you walk up, and if there's any space available, feel free to join the next class. I think the next one is about a locally made whiskey, Raksasa. So looking forward to see you guys at 3 p.m. Right? Take care. Thanks.
Okay, 3 o'clock will be the next session. Where am I now? I don't remember who I am and what's happening. Happening and who am I? Back here in 45 minutes. I'm curious about this door. Does it work?
Many patterns, many different types of things. But I back to local bank.
I think to maintain small trucks retail at 29 to 33 ringgit. And cost is around 15 to 20 depending on the choose the price. So you can bring that
Can try. Original. Ah? Thanks. It's like lamb.
I'm actually from the event side, which is everything's portable, and I bring it home to your event like this. Maybe looking for bar solution.
Lemon salt. Lemon whiskey. Whiskey must be 40% alcohol. I definitely am feeling it. Bye bye. It's 2:30 now.